You're an addict, Marcia, a compulsive gambler who hid shameful debts from her own family. Letitia's words, my daughter in law, echoed through the Harmony Falls Community Center hall, piercing every fiber of my being. It was the annual fundraising event for the local library, a place I, Marcia, 58 years old, had helped build with years of volunteer work. Hundreds of eyes turned to me, not with pity, but with a mix of shock and revulsion. I felt my face burn, not just from shame, but from disbelief. How could she do this? How could she expose me so cruelly, so publicly? My dignity, built over a lifetime of honest work and sacrifices, crumbled into pieces with every whisper, every judgmental glance. The betrayal was a fatal blow. Letitia, the woman my son Daniel had chosen, to whom I had opened the doors of my home and my heart, stood there, smiling victoriously as she watched me sink. She had discovered an isolated episode from my past, a desperate attempt to save the small family flower shop after my husband's sudden death when, in a moment of weakness and despair, I tried my luck at an online casino, losing more than I could afford. A mistake, yes, but not a shameful addiction, as she painted it. It was a secret I kept closely guarded, a scar from a time of grief and vulnerability. Now it was exposed to the entire Harmony Falls community. The air was thin, my vision blurred by unshed tears. I was humiliated, but what she didn't know was that at that very moment, as I felt the ground open beneath my feet, a flame of determination ignited within me, a flame that would make her wish she had never been born. My life had never been easy. I raised Daniel alone after my husband, John, died prematurely in a work accident. The flower shop, our livelihood, was on the verge of bankruptcy. John had no life insurance, and debts piled up. It was during this period of despair that, on a sleepless, anguished night, I found myself clicking on online gambling ads. The promise of a quick solution to financial problems was too tempting for an exhausted and grieving mind. I lost. I lost a lot, but I didn't become an addict. That was the only time. I swore to myself I would never repeat the mistake and worked tirelessly, day and night, to rebuild the flower shop and ensure Daniel had everything he needed. He was my pride, my life's project. When Daniel introduced me to Letícia 3 years ago, she seemed the embodiment of perfection, educated, charming, with a promising career in finance. I welcomed her like a daughter, taught her my family recipes, shared my stories. I never imagined that behind that sweet smile lurked a snake. After the humiliation at the community center, my phone stopped ringing. Longtime friends avoided me on the street. Pity turned into scorn. My reputation, my name, everything I had built lay in ruins. Daniel, my son, was confused, torn between his wife and his mother. He tried to defend me, but Letitia's lies were convincing, and shame prevented me from revealing the full truth about that isolated episode from the past. I was alone, wounded, but not broken. The pain of humiliation transformed into a silent strength. I didn't know how, but Letícia would pay for it. The pain of humiliation and isolation consumed me for days, but the flame of determination that ignited within me refused to die out. I couldn't accept that my life would be destroyed by a distorted lie. Letícia had messed with the wrong mother. My mother's intuition, forged in years of struggle and sacrifice, told me there was something rotten behind that facade of perfection. Why would she do something so cruel? It wasn't just about the casino episode, there was a malice, a calculation in her eyes. I needed answers. My first clue came unexpectedly. While tidying some old boxes, I found a photo album of Daniel from his college days. In one of the photos, Letícia appeared alongside a group of friends, but something caught my attention. She was wearing a necklace with a peculiar pendant, a symbol I had seen in an old news report about a financial fraud case in another city years ago. It was a tiny detail, but it put a bug in my ear. I decided to act. I started researching discreetly, using the library computer, ironically, the very place where I had been humiliated. I typed Letitia's name and the symbol of the necklace. Nothing. But when I added the name of the city from the news report, the results started to appear. An old report about a charity fund embezzlement scandal involving a young employee who disappeared without a trace. Her name wasn't Letícia, but the physical description and age matched. The photo, though low quality, showed a familiar face. My heart pounded. I was on the right track. The small town of Willow Creek, a 3 hour drive from Harmony Falls, seemed frozen in time, enveloped in an aura of tranquility that contrasted drastically with the dark history I was about to unearth. The streets were lined with well maintained Victorian houses, and the air exuded a sense of a close knit community, almost idyllic. However, behind this peaceful facade lay the memory of a scandal that shook the town 15 years ago. The embezzlement of funds from the Willow Creek Children's Foundation, a charity dedicated to supporting underprivileged children. The main suspect, a young accountant named Sarah Jenkins, disappeared without a trace, taking with her not only the money, but also the trust and hope of an entire community. The crucial detail that led me there was the necklace with the peculiar pendant that Letícia wore in Daniel's college photo, the same one Sarah Jenkins displayed in a newspaper photo from that time, a blurry but unmistakable image for anyone looking. My first stop was the local library, an imposing red brick building that exuded history and knowledge. There, under the guise of researching my family's genealogy, I requested access to old newspaper archives. Hours passed as I leafed through yellowed, brittle pages, and the story of Sarah Jenkins unfolded before my eyes with chilling clarity. She was described as a promising young woman, an orphan raised and supported by the community itself, and her betrayal was felt like a stab in the heart of Willow Creek. The amount embezzled was astronomical for the time, a sum that left the foundation on the brink of bankruptcy and deprived many children of the essential support they needed. The articles mentioned a boyfriend at the time, an idealistic young man named Mark Thompson, who was devastated by Sarah's flight and the subsequent crisis of the foundation. He had been her main defender, fervently believing in her innocence until the end, before disappearing from the town, disillusioned and heartbroken. With each new piece of information, the image of Letícia, my perfect daughter in law, shattered into 1,000 pieces. The cold calculation with which she humiliated me at the community center, the subtle and perverse way she manipulated Daniel, everything now fit into a sinister pattern. She wasn't just an ambitious woman, she was a predator, a social chameleon who changed her skin and identity to adapt to the environment and benefit from it without any scruples. The pain of my own humiliation, which had previously consumed me, began to mix with a cold anger and an unwavering determination. I was no longer just seeking revenge, I was seeking justice. Justice for the children of Willow Creek, for the young Mark Thompson, and for all those whom Sarah Jenkins, now Letícia, had deceived and hurt. I knew I was treading on dangerous ground, that this quest could have unpredictable consequences, but the truth, like an underground river, always finds its way to the surface. And I, Márcia, would be the channel for that truth, no matter the cost. With Mark Thompson's name in mind, my search intensified, now with an even clearer purpose. A quick online search revealed that he had become a successful lawyer in a neighboring city, specializing in civil law and, ironically, in fraud cases and embezzlement. Destiny, or perhaps justice itself, was weaving its own plot, connecting the loose ends of an old story. I scheduled a meeting with him under the guise of a consultation about a delicate family matter, feeling a mix of apprehension and hope. Mark's office was modern and elegant, with large windows offering a panoramic view of the city, a clear reflection of his professional success. He was a man in his mid-40s with tired eyes that seemed to carry the weight of old grievances, but an aura of integrity and seriousness that inspired immediate confidence. I began to tell the story of Letícia, the public humiliation I suffered, the growing suspicion about her past, and the details that led me to Willow Creek. As I spoke, I watched Mark's expression gradually change, his eyes fixed on me, a mix of surprise, disbelief, and an old pain resurfacing on his face. When I mentioned the name Sarah Jenkins and the necklace with the pendant, he visibly paled. "Sarah," he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. I I haven't heard that name in 15 years. I thought I never would again." I showed him the photos of Letícia, those from Daniel's college where she wore the necklace, and the old photos of Sarah Jenkins in the Willow Creek newspapers. The resemblance was undeniable, even with the subtle changes that time and probably plastic surgery had wrought. "It's her," Mark said, his voice now firm, but laden with a deep sadness that I could feel. She changed her name, had some cosmetic procedures, but it's her. I never forgot her, nor the pain she caused me. He then told me his version of the story, the pain of betrayal, the shame of having defended someone who had so cruelly deceived him, the loss of his reputation and his savings, and his disillusionment with human nature. But he had also kept something, Sarah's diary, which she had left behind in her hasty escape, like a trace of her old life. I never had the courage to read everything, Mark confessed, handing me a small, aged, leather bound notebook. But perhaps now is the time to confront the past. The diary revealed a Sarah Jenkins very different from the victim I, at some point, might have imagined. Pages and pages of cold, calculating notes on how to manipulate people, how to extract money without raising suspicion, how to build a new identity and erase the traces of her previous life. There was even a detailed plan to marry a man from a good family to ensure financial and social stability, a profile that fit Daniel disturbingly well. Daniel's name wasn't there, but the target profile was frighteningly accurate. Letitia wasn't just a con artist, she was a sociopath, a master in the art of dissimulation and manipulation. With each line I read, the web of lies became denser, more dangerous, more intricate. I held in my hands the irrefutable proof of her true nature, the key to unmasking her. Justice would come, and it would be relentless, not just for me, but for all those she had deceived. With Sarah Jenkins's, now Letitia's diary in my hands, I had the perfect weapon to expose the charade. Her words, written in her own handwriting, were a cold and detailed confession of her past crimes and her inherently manipulative nature. Mark Thompson, the lawyer, was willing to help me expose Letitia, not out of a desire for personal revenge, but from a deep sense of justice. He had been one of her younger, more naive victims, and the pain in his eyes was a silent testament to the emotional and financial damage she had caused. But the question was no longer if I would expose her, but how and when. I needed a meticulous plan that would not only unequivocally expose her, but also protect Daniel, my son, from the emotional devastation that this truth would bring. The first thing to do was to ensure Daniel was aware of his wife's true nature. I didn't want him to find out from others, or worse, from the media, which would inevitably be interested in such a scandalous story. I invited Daniel for dinner at my house, one of the few times he still visited me after the public humiliation. The atmosphere was tense, laden with expectations, but I was prepared for the most difficult conversation of my life. With the diary and newspaper clippings on the kitchen table, I began to narrate the story of Sarah Jenkins, the con artist from Willow Creek. Daniel listened in silence, his expression shifting from initial disbelief to profound shock, and finally to contained anger. He picked up the diary, leafed through the pages, recognizing his wife's handwriting, and his eyes filled with tears of frustration and disillusionment. "It can't be," he murmured, his voice broken by emotion. She wouldn't do that. She loves me." "She did, my son," I replied, my voice soft but firm, leaving no room for doubt. "And she did it again, to you, to me, to our family." I showed him the passages where Sarah described her plan to marry a man from a good family to secure her future, a plan that fit Daniel's situation perfectly. The pain on Daniel's face was palpable, but there was also a spark of understanding, a recognition of the truth he had refused to see. He was finally seeing the web of lies that enveloped him, the manipulation that blinded him. The revelation was devastating for him, but absolutely necessary. He needed to know the truth before Letícia caused more damage, before she completely destroyed him. Together, Daniel and I, with Mark's invaluable help, began to devise the plan for Letitia's public exposure. It would not just be personal revenge, it would be an act of justice that would reverberate far beyond the borders of Harmony Falls. The world was about to discover Letitia's darkest secrets, and nothing would prepare her for what I held in my hands.